I'm Bob Brill. He's Erik Kramer. Welcome to Kramer and Brill, an NFL podcast and videocast. Each week we take a look at what's going on in the NFL, and during the season we analyze your fantasy picks. Now, this week we're taking a look at something quite different. My esteemed colleague is former NFL quarterback Erik Kramer, who provides his valuable insights to the process. And unless you've been under a rock for the last 30 years, you have to know the NFL is probably the greatest marketing wing of any business in history. And to be sure, the NFL is a business. And part of that business is helping the development of its next generations of players, all the way down to elementary and junior high school, as well as high school itself, grooming the upcoming NFL players. But it's more important than that. It's a way to show kids the right and wrong way to play the game safely. And we've all heard of the punt, pass, and kick competition, which goes back to the days when I was in grade school. This is where we talk about football camps. And my colleague here actually is running a series of these camps. Erik, let me ask you, first of all, why? And then let's talk about what these camps are all about. Why did you develop what you're developing here?
Well, so I retired not because I wanted to, but because of a neck injury when I was in 1999 when I was with the Chargers, and it took me about I don't know, probably a year and a half or so, kind of physically, to just start feeling better. Mm-hmm. But in 2000. A friend of mine who had also played with the Bears for quite a while, Ryan Wetnight, a former teammate of mine in youth football, I think this was probably around 9, 10, 11 years old, named Chris English, got in touch with me, and he was coaching his son over at the TO Titans, and which is Thousand Oaks, not far by at all. And so Ryan and I started taking his son and Chris's son, and then the quarterback that was throwing to him. And then there was another receiver who I had not remembered until recently, a guy named Evan Yabu. Evan Yabu is now the head coach at Thousand Oaks High School. So he played at the high school as well. And the reason that Ryan and I started this was just to reach back and help kind of, I guess, give away what we had learned over the years. And Ryan was a tight end, kind of a H-back move tight end that was from up in Fresno. And he had come back and was living with me for a couple of years, helping coach Griffin's, my oldest son's youth football team. And then that's what we kind of started together. And then it grew from there to where I started working with Agoura High School's quarterback. What happened there was Clay Matthews, the dad, who was played even before I did, but was still playing at the same time. He was with the Browns when he played, and mostly with the Browns, and I think he ended up with the Falcons. He gave me a call one day to come over and work with their quarterback, and as a freshman, and that was the same team that his son Clay, then being with the Packers, and before that going to USC, was on. And this is Brian Walker. And that's how I started working with all the Agoura High School quarterbacks. And then I would have them bring the receivers too when they were ready. And it's been a fun experience to be part of someone else's growth. And now you see a lot of the kids that would come. Dustin Croix was the coach at or played quarterback at Agoura High School, and now he's their head coach. I mentioned Evan Yabu. Sean Miller is another one that went to Royal High School. He's now the receiver coach at Agoura High School. And then other guys would go on and play, at big colleges. Like one of the first ones was Scott Dakey, who had played Loyola High School, went to University of Virginia. And Brad Kaya was another one that had he started coming like in 8th grade. And he eventually went to Chaminade, where their coach, Ed Croson, had coached me as a 10th grader at St. Genevieve in JV. And Brad went to Chaminade, and then ended up in 2000, I think it was 12 or 13, they won the CF championship. And Brad went on to get a scholarship to play at the University of Miami, and eventually was drafted by the Detroit Lions. And so I think he was there for a couple of years. Anyway, so that whole process is just fun. And then, as I said, it kind of later grew into something where, with another former teammate, Curtis Conway, we used to run this deal at Chaminade where we were running like an NFL practice. And so there were some quarterbacks and receivers that I continued to work with during the week. And then we had a couple groups. One would be 10, maybe current, 8th and 9th graders, and then current 10th and 11th graders. And we go out there, and Curtis, for a couple of hours, would work with the, we'd have like an individual period where I'd take the quarterbacks and he'd take the receivers for about 45 minutes, goes through those drill progressions. And then we get together and run routes on air. And then a friend of mine, who coached me in junior college, Jim Fenwick, by the time I was playing in the NFL, he was at Valley College, and so, which is right across the town. And so Jim started way back in the early days when it was just kids. And then when the kids got older, now we're with high school guys, and especially the older ones, he would have guys from Valley College come over. And when I say guys, I mean like linebacker type guys and DB type guys. And we'd end up spending the last hour, run a couple periods of one-on-one, where the quarterback's throwing to a receiver against a DB, and then 7-on-7. And we'd film it, and Wednesday nights come back and watch what they did that previous week, install a few plays more. And they had a playbook. And eventually we'd watch, some NFL game video of them running the same coverages, doing things coached to be the exact same way, a little better, but the idea was all the same. And so
do you target this for a certain age group, or is it, high up? Or
I think so. When Griffin was probably, maybe 9 or 10, just to give him a little, concept of what a passing game is. There was probably 6 or 7 kids that I got to know because I coached youth football too. In fact, Griffin's team,
right?
And got to know some of these coaches from other teams or dads from other teams. And we'd go out to Agoura High School and work on a little fundamental, how to take a drop back, how to throw in the right posture. And Jake Geringer was one of them. And he played for the Camarillo Run Runners, and now he's the coach of the Camarillo High School freshman team. And so Jake went on to play, I think, at Sacramento State, and eventually he ended up going to Cal and playing there. So it's just it's a fun way to stay in touch with everybody over the years, and then help, in someone else's development.
I have to think that you were mentioning about the NFL drills and running it like an NFL practice. I have to think in one way, there may be some of these kids, because they're being coached by former NFL players. You mentioned Conway, or I remember from the Bears, as a high draft pick as a receiver there. You and some of the others, and Clay Matthews. Number one, either they have to be in awe of that, or they have to sit there and think, who are these guys? I wasn't even born when they were playing.
That probably comes into play, both of those. So it's funny how you mentioned that, because I'm coaching assistant coaching at Camarillo High School, which is about 15-minute drive from my house. Mm-hmm. And the quarterback that started last year is a guy named Brody Meyer, who's a pretty good quarterback. And I used to coach his brother privately when he was at St. Bonaventure, Logan Meyer. And so, in fact, it was Logan Meyer, their mom, Loretta, had I guess Logan had heard me on some podcast. I think it was, what was it? Adam Carolla. Mm-hmm. So Adam Carolla and I played youth football together. And so anyway, so Logan called his mom, and she texted me or something and said, "What are you up to?" And I said, "Well, not a lot, but I'm trying to get him to be a high school coach." And she says, "Oh, well, why don't you try so-and-so at Camarillo?" And so I did, and it took a few days. I guess he was on vacation, and Jack Willard got back to me. And so now I'm coaching the quarterbacks and kind of whoever the quarterbacks throw to. And so it's interesting talking with Brody the other day. I said, we were out at breakfast, and I said, all of a sudden, Brody, in the last, couple of weeks, like he has made a tremendous leap
Mhm.
in everything. And I said, whatever it is you're doing, keep doing it. He goes, well, I went to lunch with my brother, and who lives so close by, Logan. And Logan says, well, what are you guys doing? And he says, well, we're working on this drill and that drill. He goes, oh, posture stuff. Yeah, you doing the feet knives? Oh, yeah, doing that too. And so I think Brody finally kind of goes, oh, well, this isn't so bad after all.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it's been, you deal with brothers of brothers, and or the same family or people who know each other. And it's just a fun little process. And like I said, you from the very basic stuff, like the ones that are coming now are mostly current eighth graders that are going to be going to Camarillo High School. Now there's starting to be a trickle of kids from high school kids that go to Oxnard and high school, and now even some other guys from Camarillo High School. In fact, Brody said he's going to start coming next weekend. There's a couple twin brothers. One's a quarterback, one's a DB, but also plays receiver. They come, and so it's just a fun little build up. And at first, I was like, "Wow, this is really hard to kind of build up what used to be pretty damn good." And but now that it's starting to, I guess, starting to weave my way in, I suppose, with some of these youth organizations and the dads behind them. And yeah, it's just been fun. There's a kid there that named Grant Wall, who's a current eighth grader. He's 13 years old, and he's going to play tight end. Now, how these Camarillo High School guys, they constantly get these 6'3", 4, 5.
Yeah, youth sports in the Ventura County and Conejo Valley area have been huge for years, and I watched a lot of the kids play in baseball. Usually baseball's their number one thing, football number two, and basketball somewhere down along the way, and even some kids play hockey. It's just that I look at kids and I say, okay, I'm almost 5'10". It's like everybody's bigger than me by a lot.
Me too. So anyway, so I'm talking to his dad this morning, Rick, and Rick, I'm sorry, Grant never played youth football, never played tackle youth football, and but his dad coached him in flag football, and obviously the NFL is involved in continuing to get kids to play, and I think that's a great, flag football for young kids is awesome. And talking to Rick this morning, he was like, he made sure, Rick did, that every kid, because flag football is basically passing. Mm-hmm. And so he made sure every kid got a couple chances to at least catch the ball, to the point where if they were down on close to the goal line, they would have a kid basically go cross the goal line, turn around, get on his knees, and be throwing the ball just to have him score. In fact, that he said they had a couple of kids that were, sort of challenged, sort of physically and mentally, and he would get with the other coach and say, "Hey, this kid hasn't scored all year," and vice versa. The other coach would do that same thing, and they would make sure each other's teams got kids to perform something successfully. And I think that's as much as anything with youth sports is, first of all, getting sort of good fundamentally at what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Because I coached my two sons in youth football too. And that first year was Griffin's team, and we were in an 8, 9, and 10-year-old league. And we had a few 10-year-olds that had played before, and were very good, but we only had a few. And then, in fact, one of them was Justin Arias, who went on he was a tailback, but then had to play quarterback. And then he's the guy that scored, and talented guy. He's one that scored the only touchdown we had. And he went on to play at Agoura High School, as all of his other two brothers did too. And Justin, I think, ended up going to, I want to say it was Idaho State, and ended up setting a bunch of passing records there. And I think he had a chance to try out in the NFL, and I don't know what happened with that. But anyway, going back to this team, we had a the offense that I ran in junior college was, when I say I ran, that I was a part of. The running game part of it was brought in by a guy named Don Markham, and we had 4 running plays, but 4 running schemes. It was a double team, pull the backside, guard and tackle, and quarterback turn and pitch the ball, fullback kick out the end, and everybody do their thing. And we had a counter, and we had a trap, and we had a sweep. That was it. And we were, just because of doing it all the time, it got really good. And so that's what I thought I did bring to our kids, but they were so young. Most of them had never played football before.
Right.
And then
nobody knew what a pulling guard was, right?
Exactly. Didn't know how to get in a 3-point stance. Didn't know how to where to line up in a huddle. And so we didn't win a game. And I think Justin scored the only touchdown. And so all these teams, we and I'm talking scrimmages too. We were terrible. We couldn't get a playoff. And then the next year, things started to turn around. And I remember we beat a Westlake team that had, I can't remember. He went on to play at Westlake. He was a receiver and played in the NFL for a little bit. Went to Colorado, set a bunch of receiving records there. They had a really good athlete, running back by the name of Brandon Hagee, who's now on the PGA Tour. And so they were good, and we beat them the next year. And it was in a rain game over to Gura High School, and kids were just going bonkers. Right? But it went to show me that as things turned around, if you stay with the right fundamentals, doing the right things over time, it's going to get better.
Well,
and
I guess that's I was going to ask you what the most common thing you have to correct and teach these kids is, and I understand it's probably fundamentals, but what in those fundamentals seems to be the thing that lacks most, that you have to really get started on the basics on every kid, whether they're played or not.
I don't care what we're talking about. I don't care what sport we're talking about. So let's just take football, youth football, and kids. The idea of getting in a stance and then actually creating leverage to move something or somebody is completely foreign. And so learning how to do that, learning how to take a proper step into a bag, and then into a person, and then into a moving person, that takes some time. And then having 2 people do it together in a double team fashion also takes quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
Having to play the person that takes that double team on takes a bit of time. And but to get back to what Clay Matthews taught me, it's basically 5 or 10 minutes per day of doing X, Y, and Z that then turn into W, X, Y, and Z, and then so on and so on and so on. And you get good at just little things. And then you kind of tie that into, as if you're on defense, here's where you line up. You shade this guy and you're responsible for that gap. And the linebackers, you set up cones. This is your gap and that's your gap. And it comes out of that. And literally, like, by the age of, say, 11, 12, defensively, we were running over, under, zone blitz, and it turned in from not doing it all that well to doing it very well. And
okay.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, in the passing camp is no different. And so learning how to play catch is one where it starts for both the quarterback and the receiver, to have the correct posture when you're doing both. Dropping back, again, same posture, and how to run a route and then catch it at the same time. That pretty soon, those kids eventually learn how to read coverages.
Very simply. It's interesting because I did a series of instructional videos for baseball a while back, and it was like the same thing where you mentioned any sport, because there's such a misconception when a kid's playing the infield is when you go to your right or left, is it a slide or is it a crossover step, things like that, or which foot hits the base when you're running around the bases, which the left foot or the right, the inside foot or the outside foot. So I know what you're talking about there. Did do you run into the parents that are sort of little league parents? I mean, we all know how bad little league parents could be. Most of them are supportive and everything, but there's also those guys and women too that just it's my kid. What are you doing? Do you run into those as well?
I'll tell you that when I first started with Griffin's team, we had the greatest parents I've ever been around. And a lot of these dads found the time or made the time to coach, and the moms were awesome. We'd do stuff together away from football to go out to eat and whatever it was. And like I said, we were so bad so early that and I remember getting some of the dads over to Carl's Jr. like just a few weeks into the summer, going, all right, I don't think I can do this, because it wasn't coming together. And I remember one of them said, okay, so if you can't do this, then who's going to? So and ultimately, obviously, I didn't stop doing it, and it got better. And when you get back to the parents, we never had a parent issue really until with Griffin's team. I can't remember an issue that we had in all the way through seniors. Dylan's team, my younger son's team, however, I'm sorry, no. On Griffin's team, there was a a kid whose mom had called after a few years, after he got fairly good, who called and said, "Hey, is there room for my son on your team? He plays over at Westlake." And I said, "Oh, sure." And so he came over, and he was a pretty good player. And they got to be about, I don't know, it was coming into the senior years, right? So the last year before high school. And I remember after a picture day, she comes up to me and she says, "Coach, really appreciate everything you're doing, but my son he needs some more touches as a running back." And I said, "Okay, well," and I listened to everything she said, and I encouraged the parents at any time to come to me with anything. And then I remember telling her, "Okay, so remember, a couple years ago, you actually called me, not vice versa. And so this is not a minor league system. This is this is youth football. And in fact, the kid that your kid's sharing some time with plays tackle and linebacker. And so he's actually a good athlete too, only he works quite a bit harder, plays quite a bit harder. And so I don't think it's a big thing for him to get some reps too." And I said, "If you want to go back to Westlake, you're certainly more than welcome." And I think sometimes the parents, not all, but some, lose the idea that there should be, grateful at least. And all of a sudden, they become the stage parent. And but like that, that did not happen. That was not the rule at all. And so one of the things that I was talking about this morning with Rick Wall is he said how important it is to teach kids how you lose and lose gracefully, because that's part of life and it's part of sports. And I said, yes, you're absolutely right, but it's also how to win gracefully. And not only the kids, but the parents. And so I think it all has you're all in a cocoon where you can all learn the same things. That's my opinion.
Well, I know I always took the philosophy it was always good to become well, not good, but you had to become a good loser to become a good winner. I know the first teams I played on baseball as a kid were always awful, and I got to not accept losing, but it made me want to win more. But not only that, when I got to be on a team that was a winning team and actually did something to the next level, it made me appreciate the losing part of it and appreciate the now that I'm on a winning team, how much sweeter that felt and the accomplishment I'd had because I'd learned. You learn by experience, you learn by mistakes, and that's a big part of just what you're saying there. The NFL has a lot of programs involved in this. What can you tell us about that? What do we know about the programs the NFL has?
Well, okay, so a few years ago, they started something called Play 60. And my cousin, Jill, she's I don't know, 6, 7 years younger than me. At that time, she was a teacher. Actually, no, she worked for the district. She lives up north in Hollister, and she got involved in that. And they would, I remember her telling me they would, as a group of not only from her school and their district, but others, and they would congregate at different NFL cities and stadiums. I remember she told me they went to the Cowboy Stadium, and it's basically to encourage kids to get out of the house and start playing. And I know they're involved in also a flag football program that the NFL supports. And I think, just as you mentioned, the NFL is a great marketing machine. But I think also there are so many good lessons to be learned just in the sport itself, really any sport. You learn over time how to get better at what it is you're doing fundamentally. And you learn both how to lose, how to win gracefully, hopefully. You build friendships, you're part of a team that's obviously bigger than just you. Tennis and golf are great, I'm sure. And I play golf, I play tennis. But you're not part of a team, not that kind of team. And I think team sports have something that individual sports or no sports at all don't provide. And that's where you are responsible not only to yourself, but to others. And they also are responsible to you too. So from the coaching on down, I think youth sports offers that, especially given when you've got good-natured people who are in charge, the ones that are in it for the right reasons. There's a coach that I've met through this Camarillo youth football, guy named Antonio Skeeters, and went out and watched what they do last, I think it was Saturday or Sunday. And it's normally as an organization from young kids all the way up, and watching him and another coach. And he said, he goes, normally there's 50 kids out here. And there was at least 20, but the way he and this other coach go about making conditioning fun, playing games. Like they played this game where you'd have to pick up a cone. So it was a line of kids, you have to pick up a cone, and there's two groups, so they're going against each other. And you sprint down, and he had these circular, almost like hula hoops, but not that big. And they were multicolored, and he had set them up. There was one red one in the middle, set up like tic-tac-toe. So they were sprinting down and putting the cones inside the circles to win at tic-tac-toe. And you couldn't go until that guy placed his cone and ran all the way back and touched the other kid. So it was it. Oh, and then had to carry a football at the same time. Wow. So it was just kind of a cool watching adults work with kids in such a positive environment. And they go, oh, yeah, we do this every week, pretty much every Sunday or Saturday when it's not football season, at least. So what are we in now? May. So at least do May and June. And it was just fun to watch. And I think that's kind of the right mentality to use. Like he was telling me, Antonio, that he got so much out of playing football. And he goes, if I could have started this when I was even 12 years old, that would have been great. And that's what he wants to hand down to his son and other kids. And I think, when you go about it that way, and it's not, grind it out and you're I've seen some coaches, and and it's normal. And at youth sports, it can be, but not. It's not always, but it can be where it's just kind of roll the ball out, and whoever our best athletes is, the other team, we're going to get him the ball, and then as the other team, you try to stop it. And they have no. I've been on the other side. They have no. They couldn't have it. They don't have a care in the world what. How you are as a team or whatever. And so it was I'd say enjoyable in a way to me that later on, these very coaches were on the losing end of playing our team. And it was very it showed our kids that if you stick to fundamental things over time, what you might not have physically, you will make up for.
Yeah. One of the things, and I want to get to, we'll want to talk about here, wrap it up here in a minute. Well, one of the things I did when the idea behind the website that I was talking about with baseball instruction that I started was called Bob Brill's Baseball Camp. And there's so many parents who came here as kids from other countries who have no clue as to what American baseball was like. And, they know soccer and they know some of the other sports. They know some NFL football because of the way the NFL has been marketed around the world. But there were parents who now have kids coming up who they want to, interact with their kids. And so I did this website. Mainly, that was one of the reasons for it, was to teach very basic level some of the things and the rules of the game as well, and which were I was surprised at how many hits I got on that part of the videos for that. And people sending me an email saying, "Look, I'm from Germany. I never played baseball. Thank you for doing this." And you have that same thing with what you're doing. People coming who now we have so many people from different countries who just need that instruction. Now, you're starting something in the off season, I believe, in 2024.
Yeah. But before I get to that, on the point you just made. So I mentioned Ed Croson before, who had been first the coach at Birmingham High School, and he turned that program around. They had a couple guys there that would come to the camp that, ended up completely, just stepped onto their campus and weren't really anybody in terms of as a football player, who ended up, one guy, Ryan Lombardo, their quarterback, ended up throwing for over 3,000 yards or something, went to UCLA, and they had Milton Knox, who was a running back that also came and ended up being I think it was a state player of the year or something, went on to play in the NFL for a little bit after going to UCLA. And so there's a lot of stories like that where, kids that might not have even dreamed that, can achieve that. And back to your point about international stuff, Ed Croson, the short story is he ran a few plays while he was at Chaminade that were directly from that Don Markham offense and that pitch play I was talking about. And he sent me a clip the other day. He's been working with the coaches for a team, one in Costa Rica, one in Brazil via Zoom. There's an interpreter and stuff. And he sent me a clip that the team in Costa Rica just won whatever league championship they had. He sent me a clip of 37 pitch in Costa Rica. And he goes,
Wow.
Let me tell you, these guys, all they want to do, they don't know football, and they want to go right from, just want to hit somebody, and but to do it in an organized fashion is pretty cool. And like to mention like Costa Rica, when have they ever even heard of football?
Yeah.
And so
great surfing beaches, though. Great surfing beaches.
Never been. I'm not a surfer, but I'm sure. But anyway, so yeah, you mentioned so in 2024, one of the things I'm thinking of doing, and I've already started making this, is where I have a vision for creating a passing camp, okay, for both offense and defensive, not just players, but the coaches in high school. And so let's just take this from an offensive standpoint. I mentioned the that I'm coaching at Cameron High School now. And years ago, Curtis and I used to run this kind of high level camp that I can guarantee you didn't exist before, and it doesn't exist now. Not that way. And so, let's just say, and this already happened, I call up the guy who's in charge of alumni for the Lions. And the idea I have is to use the Lions practice field or facility, or the Bears, or even right here in LA in the Chargers, because the Rams are right across the street from where I live, and the Chargers, who I played for years, they're right down in Costa Mesa. But the idea being that we hold a 3-day clinic, and you make a pre-recorded video that kind of goes through some of the basics, like what we do at this camp. Okay, here, and what I do at high school. Here's zone-wise, cover 2, cover 3, and cover 4. Man-to-man wise, here's cover 1 and cover 2, man. And here's how they work. And here's a few basic offensive plays out of the West Coast passing game, which is what I played with the Bears, and Curtis too. And here's the basic routes on that beat those basic coverages. And then you start to back that up with like you give them an advanced playbook, and there's a motion capture. What is it? A motion. It's like it's called Tactic 3D. It's a software company, and in the old days, and most even now, you would be relegated to using a piece of paper to diagram circles going that way and X's on defense, but it's all drawing. And once it's in, it's done. And now you can create these same plays and these same defenses where there are avatar players moving in motion throughout. And so I'm starting to work with that now, and there's going to come a time where I'll get good at it. And you, through a website, give everybody access to this, players, coaches, and they start studying it up and make it a series. And by the time, let's say, me and Curtis, who lives in Atlanta now, he's interested in doing this, but as long as I get the details ironed out, and whether it be, here's what I envision: myself, someone like Curtis as a receiver, someone who had been a pass catching sort of tight end in the NFL, who now likes to teach, and then whether hopefully they've had experience doing it before, whether in high school or younger, and want to continue, or and a sort of a pass catching type of running back, and we give a clinic with both coaches and players, and the first day might just be meetings and reviewing what's in that playbook and what some of the concepts are and defenses and so forth, and take questions. And even with, like, so 2 of us will be with the coaches, 2 of us will be with the players, and then maybe later that afternoon after lunch or something, you go into the indoor facility and you start demonstrating some of this stuff, and then you start having meetings. And then maybe on day 2 and day 3, now you're having meetings where you're installing and you're going over little drill progressions like I talked about, and you maybe have where you get, now you start getting the players, like we'd be supervising the coaches, coaching the players, and then you've got the same with defense going on. And because in high school, your best players play both ways, especially at the schools that I'm talking about, not the modern days of the world. In Chicago, they have a school there that's Loyola, which is, they're kind of the modern day of Chicago. Well, it just so happens that Mark Carrier, who was a teammate of mine with the Bears as a safety, he went to what's the Long Beach Poly, then to USC. So I reached out to Mark here just the other day, haven't heard back yet, in each city, this might be something that someone like Mark and other players who might have played still live and still want to teach. And what I'm saying, he used to teach. I think I remember seeing where he coached at one time for the Jets as a defensive line coach. So it's not like he didn't like to coach. And as long as people are in that town and don't have to travel and make it a full-time operation, that might be something they get involved with. I reached out to Dave Wanstead, and he's actually got a grandson at Loyola, and he's got 5 in Chicago. And so he got back to me and said, hey, if I'm in town, because I'm doing most of Grandpa stuff now, and as you might know, he's on Fox during the season. But this is some off season I'm talking about. And he was saying that, if I'm in town, that, yeah, I'd love to help out with that. And so that's what I'm talking about, is we can, whether it be Detroit, Chicago, I went to NC State, right here in LA, you got the same situation with both 2 teams. And so, and I even told the guy with Camarillo Youth, Antonio, I said, if you want to start doing some clinics and helping me coach your coaches to coach players, I got it all on film right now. So this is something I think that the sports world needs, and that doesn't have just yet. But I think, like I was saying, in 2024, that would give me, in the off season, that would give me a good year or more to kind of find these folks. And then maybe if they're local, they can become part of this passing camp. And we can even do it right here. So anyway, that's kind of what's heading down the tracks.
Well, that's great. It's and the NFL gets behind it. I can see this taking off in every city in the country. And especially every NFL city, and like you mentioned, places where you don't have an NFL team, like at NC State. This has been great, Erik, and I really want to wish you luck with that one. If we can help out in any way, let's do it. So, if you have a kid that wants to play football or just enjoys playing football, or even it's something they want to tackle, no pun intended, look forward to this whole program. That'll do it for another edition of Kramer and Brill. Don't forget to join us next time wherever you get your shows and on my Bob Brill YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.